Well, good evening, everybody. I think, first and foremost, there's a burning question. Exeter Chiefs, LV Cup finalists, European quarter-finalists still to play, second in the Premiership. The wonder kids of English rugby, Slade, Noel, Dickey, Ewers. Where's it all gone so wrong?
How long have you been working here, Chris? No, to be fair, I think it's like anything. I'm a big believer in time, and I think what we're really seeing is that, and where we've been probably successful as a rugby club, we've been able to time the success of what we want as a business, as a club, and what we want as a side out on the pitch. And we've been able to kind of keep the two in pace and in step very well, and I think they've been very, very important in our success. You know, we didn't go panicking when we got from the Championship into the Premiership. We didn't overspend, we didn't go beyond budget, and in some ways, I think that actually helped us because it meant we stayed sensible within what we wanted to achieve as a side. We didn't go out and splash a lot of money at players who were beyond their best, who wouldn't really have added to the culture or the environment we had here. We stuck with what we knew, which was a committee group of players who were very fit. And I know we'll talk about that in a minute. Who were very fit. You were one of those, Chris. Amazing. Who were very fit and worked extremely hard and had a lot of passion for what they did, and were very friendly and wanted to work hard for each other. And I think that gave us those core values that all we've really done on time is just add a little bit at a time. You know, the group players became more experienced with their time in the Premiership because we didn't have a lot of Premiership experienced players. They gained experience very quickly. We kept picking them whether we won or lost. We didn't panic too much. As they gained experience, we also started to be able to put the bedrock of our foundation bedrock of our academy in place, because all of a sudden our best academy players didn't leave to go to Bath or Gloucester because of the success the first team were having. And I think all we've done really is just, I'm not going to say buy ourselves time, but we've allowed ourselves to mature, and we've allowed ourselves to mature in the right way. So our academy players have had the opportunity to come in to a certain level of rugby and gain experience and develop. Our other players have been able to gain some experience not only in the Premiership but then into the Heineken Cup, and they've become better players. They've experienced times playing at Leicester or Northampton, and you don't become a worse player. You don't become a worse person by experiencing big things, whether you win or lose. You know, everything about it says you're going to become better, you're going to improve, you're going to become more driven by it. You know, you might get the odd 30 or 40 point hammering, which we did in the first couple of years, but it's not going to make you a worse player. And we stood very much by those principles that, you know, gaining experience and enjoying what we did and not panicking too much and not getting on a roller coaster where if we lost we were awful and we had to drop everybody, and if we won we were fantastic and, you know, we were always going to be in the Premiership. We just kept things on an even keel, and all we've really done, you know, the truth is where we are this year is just a product of 5 or 6 years of keeping things calm and steady. We've slowly been able to invest more in the team, we've slowly been able to invest more in the facilities, and I think we just kind of kept a nice pace together. We haven't tried to throw everything at it in any one year. We haven't panicked if a year's not started well. You know, last year we finished 8th, which is actually relatively disappointing for us. But we finished 8th, picking one of the youngest teams in the Premiership, which was always going to pay off this year. You know, that was the truth. It was always going to pay off to some degree this year. And I think that's all you're seeing. It's just little steps taken at a nice, calm, and without anybody panicking along the way.
Yeah, fantastic. And looking at it now, we are established, we're a Premiership force, it's all happening. There's quite an interesting split within the squad. You've got 52 full-time players, and you've now managed to be able to almost run 2 distinct 15s. There's been an LV Cup team and a team that's been playing in the Premiership. How do you work towards managing the expectation of 52 guys where only 15 can play? How have you managed working this almost like 2 teams playing within one, all staying on task together?
I think the best thing we do is that you know, my favourite saying with the team is, if you act like men, we'll treat you like men. And I think that's what we do. We expect guys who aren't playing to be disappointed, but they don't get ignored. And I think that's probably something that, and you've probably seen yourself, Bentis, with some players who come from other clubs. They kind of get used to not seeing the head coach for 6 months sometimes, or not talking to anybody if they're not involved in the team. But we probably actively try and do that the other way. You know, I'm very aware the guy who needs the most managing is the guy who's going to be most frustrated and most disappointing. And often you can just deal with things by paying that guy a bit of attention. We work very hard on making sure every player here knows how important they are to everything we achieve. At every club dinner we have, we probably celebrate the leaving players more than the players who remain because of what they've done for us. So I think making everybody within that group feel important is the biggest thing. You know, we talk about it every week. We talk about, we talk about things like the no talent battle, which I know is probably a big thing you can talk about in business. And
so, this no talent battle, I love this one. Can you sort of elaborate a bit further on that?
Well, basically, the no talent battle.
Probably because it's the tale of my life. No talent, but I try.
I was exactly the same. That's why I'm glad I'm nowhere near the team playing rugby anymore. It's basically, I think when we first came in the Premiership, you know, and we're honest enough to talk. Always been very honest with our team, and we did say to the team, look, you're not the best team in the Premiership. We're going in the Premiership. You're not the best team in the Premiership. Let's not kid ourselves. But we're going to go there. We're going to enjoy it, and we're going to prove some points. And it doesn't matter about anything else. There's nothing that's going to stop us working harder than every other team in the Premiership. There's no reason for us not to work any harder. That's just a mindset. So we've probably started with us just saying there's no reason why we can't work harder than anybody else. Whether they've got British Lions or internationals, we can still work just as hard as them. And what it's kind of developed into, and I think because it becomes more real and actually more easily understood, is we talk about the no talent battles that happen in the game of rugby. So as an example, it doesn't take that talent to get off the floor when you're tired. It takes a decision, it takes a mental decision.
Bloody hurts.
Well, it does, exactly. But it doesn't take talent, it takes a decision. It doesn't take talent to actually bend over and push in a scrum when you're tired. It takes a mental decision to do it. It doesn't take talent to chase a kick as hard as you can. It takes a decision. I'm going to run as quick as I can. And winning the no talent battles is a very important thing.
With regards to kicking, there's a good one on that, isn't it? With the video analysis we do in the GPS, you can actually measure if a guy is chasing a kick.
Yeah, we know if they're chasing it flat out or whether they're running at 60%. So there's lots of things that we can judge the players on. And I think all that does then, when you talk about managing 50 players, if you trip it down into a training week, the no talent battle for a guy who's not in the team is to turn up at a gym session and work flat out. It's easy for him to turn up and look like he's worked quite hard and bench press 100 kilos when he can actually do 102. Where he decides to win the no talent battles is eventually what will get him in the first team. And just probably reiterating to the players that, and this is my opinion, and some people say it's a bit of a cop out. I tell the players that I don't pick the team, they do. Because ultimately I watch everything they do in training. I know I watch every single thing they do in the game because I code every game and I watch every single thing every single player does here. So I don't pick the team, they do. Their actions pick, and the way they train and the way they behave and the way they act as men, they set aside. And I think if you get everyone to understand that, you can actually start to manage a group relatively easily. And of course we do let them have fun. We took them to Magaluf at the start of the year. You can't enjoy that, can you?
No. I think they might have enjoyed Vegas if they'd have finished further up the table. There's a couple of boys in the room, Jim and Stino. Hello, fellas. So we've established the culture. We've established this no talent battle. You mentioned the fact that obviously when we came into the Premiership, we weren't the best team. There was guys like Chris Bentley sort of knocking around. And what's happened is they've fallen out the bottom, and rather than replace at that level, we've gone up on the top. So it's a real easy example. When I left the club, we signed 33 cap international Dean Mum. Slight disparity. Slight. The recruitment and retention. How do you work about recruiting new players? Do you just look at them as rugby players? Do you look at them as characters and individuals? How does that work?
Well, it's a bit of everything, and I think that probably describes also like another step that we've taken forward year on year. I mean, there's a big secret in coaching that not a lot of coaches talk about. I talk about it quite openly and honestly. If you want to be a successful coach, have a lot of good players. That's it. And I think that, as Chris said, there's ways of doing it. Obviously, we take it very seriously how we work with our own academy players to try and make them good players. That obviously helps us be a successful team. If we work with the players we've got here to maximise their potential, whether that be with the conditioning staff, how they work with the players, with how we work with them as coaches, with the attitude they have to get better themselves. Obviously, every time you can create a better player, and also with recruitment, either with players you feel can come in who will improve in their time here, or players who are probably already a little bit better than what you've got and also will add the quality to your squad. It's all part of the same thing, which is to try and just up the quality of everything you do, bit by bit. And as again, I think that's kind of what we've done very well. We've managed to spend quite a lot of time on recruiting the right kind of person. We haven't actually chased after people very much, and I know maybe in the last 2 or 3 years that might sound a bit strange because you might say some of the guys we've recruited when we've signed international players that we've chased after them, but actually a lot of them, and you'll probably see it, have been recruited very late in the season, and it's often because we spent an awful lot of time waiting to see if they're the right kind of person for us. Dean Munn we signed very, very late on, and it took a big decision for us to go for an overseas international player who we couldn't really spend a lot of time interviewing and meeting. The younger players we bring in, or the players we bring in from a championship sides, I often talk about them as being development players, but we never talk about them being gambles, because we don't gamble on players. We don't bring a player in here who is a gamble. You know, most of the time we've spent 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 full games being watched of them before we even meet with them, to know that there's a spark in there. I suppose this year the players who would stand out would be, say, Tom Francis and the Mitchelleys, who were championship players but showed some real qualities over pretty much a whole championship season to know they would fit in and they were capable of playing Premiership rugby. Obviously, how quickly they'll play Premiership rugby, you don't know. You know, that is a little bit of a time scale you can't work on. But if you spend the time, that's why recruitment is such an important part of the job. If you spend the time on recruiting the right players, you get a better team. If you get a better team, you're a better coach, aren't you?
I would agree. And speaking of being a better coach, we're now at the business end of the season, and this is, I think it's fair to say, the first time we're at the business end of the season where there's expectation. It's been a luxury for the Chiefs to be in positions, you know, the game in Paris and such like that we've had in the past. How are you managing the squad now as we're going into games and we've got a real, I'm assuming it's a good draw in your opinion, that we're playing all the teams around us in the league. Rob Hunter coined the phrase, if we beat them, it's almost straight knockout rugby, but we've now got a period of 6 weeks, which is ostensibly every game is a cup final for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything, isn't it? I think the only way to look at it is that it's exciting. You know, if you want to back down from being, if you want to back down now and get worried about being second in the league and in quarterfinals and in finals, we kind of shouldn't really be here. Ultimately, I don't really. It never really bothers me. You've heard me say this, Chris, when you were playing. Where we end up and whether we win and lose games of rugby is never the biggest thing to me. It's really how we perform. And if we go out in the next 5 Premiership games and we go out and we play with the genuine qualities that we can show, and we put everything into the game, and the guys are prepared well, and they've genuinely got onto that rugby pitch with an attitude to win the game, I'm not really going to complain. You know, if the other 5 clubs do a better job than we do, but it's not been because that we've not been there and we've not tried to achieve wins and we've not prepared well, you take that on the chin. That's what sport's about. You know, you should only be disappointed if you let yourselves down. You shouldn't be disappointed if a better team beats you on the day. We've been plenty of teams. I'd like to think we get credit for that. You know, when we went to Leicester in the semi-final 2 weeks ago, I'd like to think there should have been some credit to Exeter there, not just that Leicester didn't perform well enough. And if you want to have the credit when you win, you've got to be prepared to give credit to other teams when they beat us. And for me, it's just a huge opportunity for us to go out there, play to our strengths, hopefully, show everybody what a good side we are, that we deserve to be in this top 4 in the Premiership. You know, our target at the start of the season, without doubt, was to be in the top 6 in the Premiership, because we want to be in the top flight European competition. But we want to be in the top flight competition because it's just brilliant. You know, it's just a great experience. It's fantastic for the club, it's fantastic for the players.
I remember the night in Toulon, yes.
You know, they're remarkable things to be involved with. And you talk about how you develop young players or how you develop your team. Well, a perfect example, you know, players, you know, our group of players, some of who, as you said, were in the Championship a few years ago, some have come through our academy, some who we've brought in from other teams, to go there as 23 players and play away at Toulon and play as they did, is fantastic for us. And those are the kind of foundations that will make us a really, really good club and a really strong club down the line. If we're afraid of being in big competitions and quarterfinals, and if we're afraid of going to Leicester in a game that will maybe move them above us in the league and drop us down 5 places, if we're afraid of that, we're kind of in the wrong place. If we're excited about it and we're going to go for it, which is not my favourite phrase, I suppose, if we're going to go for it, then you know there's nothing really for us to lose, is there?
Well, I suppose being specific now, looking to the Leicester game, for those of you that don't know, we're second in the league at the moment, playing Leicester. We're uncharacteristically 5th, I believe, at Leicester, Fortress Welford Road. Specifically for this weekend, is the catchphrase for the guys, go for it? Because I mean, I know at the beginning of the week we have sort of macropedic, we look at all sorts of facets of play, we squeeze it down to 1 or 2 communications. Is the main thing, let's go for it?
Yes, but it's always go for it in this way and with these things in mind. You know, it's not go for it because we're going to run from behind our own try line. Obviously, I mean, it's an element of, we know very much that we've got to be very, very strong at set piece. We've probably got to play with an accuracy. I think accuracy has been the big word of this week, because ultimately by being accurate and not making too many mistakes, you take a huge part of their game out, a huge part of strength of their game away, which is their scrum. You know, there's masses of times where they will march their way up a pitch by winning a penalty at a scrum. They'll drive a line out. If you give up a penalty at the driven line out, you're then defending all of a sudden on your try line. You can go try line to try line in 2 or 3 phases. If you're accurate, if you don't make the knock on, if you don't make the error that gives them a scrum put in, you never get into that cycle of them trying to force penalties out of you. And so I think us being accurate when we go for it at the right times, us playing territory very well, and of course our forwards actually having to stand there in front of their pack of forwards for the 80 minutes will ultimately be deciding the game. I mean, the LB Cup final, it wasn't a miracle. You saw our pack of forwards by the end of the game out scrummage and out drive Leicester's pack of forwards. If you know, it sounds pretty simple, but it's pretty tough. But if you get those elements right, things will go well for us this weekend.
And final question from me before we sort of go to the floor. I've played with you as a player, played against you as a player. I've seen you develop to become the hot tip to be the next England coach. Which do you prefer, playing or coaching?
There's nothing like playing. Absolutely nothing like, whatever anybody says, I can't ever believe it. I think for the camaraderie of, and I'd like to think that's probably what we try and, as a coaching team. So I know Ali and Rob are very similar minds to myself. You know, there is nothing like playing. There's nothing like succeeding or even failing or standing and fighting together, isn't it, to achieve something as a team. And I think as much as coaching is great, and especially coaching at Exeter, and especially coaching the players we've got here, because you know I'm very lucky. You know, I like the players we've got here, and I think that's a huge part of the attraction of being a coach at Exeter. We've got a good group of men here to work with. There is nothing quite like sitting in that changing room after a game and you look around and you've achieved something together, and you get on the bus and you can talk about what you've done, and you know it kind of is the special thing about sport. And I think, you know, the reason guys like me hang on in coaching is because we're hanging on with our fingernails and we don't want to let it all go, and we can see other people doing it, and watching other people doing it. You know, watching Gareth on the bus is one of the most enjoyable parts of my job.
This is the music, Matt. This is the music.
Everything he does is one of the most
enjoyable. Everybody buy him a drink. Trust me, Stino will be brilliant in the next 10 minutes. I think we've got about 5 more minutes. Have we got any questions from the floor? Rob Baxter, hot tip to be the next England coach, possibly. Any questions whatsoever? Yes, Chris Lorimer will go.
Yeah, can you tell us about your latest signing, the Australian?
Ollie Atkins from Edinburgh. Yeah, well, obviously, whatever you see in the press about Dean, Dean kind of let me know a fair while ago now that he was thinking of leaving. And actually, when he initially, to be fair to him, when he was initially going to leave, he was probably thinking of retiring from rugby. And for various reasons that are obviously personal to Dean, he was looking at probably a move back to Australia and probably to start a career outside of rugby. Now, obviously, with him thinking that seriously, that obviously made us start to look on the market for replacements. And Dean actually mentioned to me at the time that he thought Ollie Atkins, who he played with at Sydney University, which is kind of a feeder club to the Waratahs back in Australia, he played with him when he was first coming through, and thought he was worth spending a bit of time looking at. So obviously when the Dean finalised his decision to move on, we had a look at him. We'd actually preliminary had a look at him previously to us knowing Dean was leaving, because he'd come up, our analyst here, Simon Norris, does some work for Welsh television as well, and had seen him playing some Rabo Direct games when he was working for some of the Welsh sides, and had just said, look, he's a young second row coming through, he looked like he was heavily involved in the game, he's worth us keeping an eye on. So we'd kind of tracked him for a couple of months before we knew Dean was leaving, and then with Dean leaving, obviously we looked at him in more detail. So he's probably a bigger, heavier set guy than Dean, probably not quite as athletic, but not many second rows can run tries in from the halfway line. But he's got some similar qualities, you know, very high work rate, a very good work ethic, likes to work hard in the scrum and in the set piece. And I just think sometimes when you get used to watching individual players quite closely, you start to recognise whether they're very good at following a game plan, and are they working for the guys around them, are they fitting into systems, and you can see a lot of that in him. So I think he's just one of those kind of bit of an unpolished diamond. You do get a few talent from the Southern Hemisphere who kind of drop into rugby. Mitch Lees is probably a similar example, dropped in from Australian rugby and has some very good qualities that you can you can work with very easily.
Was there another question?
I was going to say, how difficult is it can it be to manage injuries? I mean, obviously it's a very
For those that don't hear it about how do you manage injuries? I think it's about 30% of your career you're injured nowadays.
I think to be honest, it's like Chris. I mean, there's obviously it's like anything. There is an element of luck all the time, obviously, because it's a physical contact game. You get caught in a certain way. There's sometimes doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get injured. I mean, the big byword here now, probably with our conditioning team, and I know it sounds strange, is low level. You know, you hear them talking about low level exercises and low level rehab and low level prehab all the time. And basically, what they mean is the players working on the smaller muscle groups that actually help stabilise the body when you're in the big physical activities. So it sounds a little bit strange. You know, most people would imagine that these big, huge, strong guys, they pick up as much weight off as they can off the floor over and over again. So big bench presses, big squats. Now, obviously, they do that, and you can see that when you stand next to some of the, especially the bigger guys. But what actually prevents injuries is your body actually working and moving in balance, and you actually being able to, if you take a blow in one direction, your body's be able to react in another. And probably the best way to describe it is the little muscles that link the big muscles together. And if you make those strong and you keep them, you know, you hear the words like core strength and basically linking your upper body to your lower body. And some of the low level stuff is very, very important in preventing some of the, especially the little niggly injuries that can start to happen, like tight hamstrings that lead to hamstring pulls. Calves, you know, they're all to do with little muscular stability things around the middle of your body, that if things get out of line and things get weak, then it doesn't really matter how big and powerful you are. In some ways, you're actually working against yourself. You're creating injuries by muscles pulling in the wrong way and not balanced. And so a lot of time now, the guys spend an awful lot of time, you know, lying on mats and stretching and moving and using smaller weights and. I suppose you describe Pilates type movements and using bands, those kind of exercises as well as the big weights.
And one final question, you go on, one fire away.
Now the scales have tipped and top players want to come to the Chiefs, on your wish list, who would you like to pick up the phone to?
Chris Bentley aside, obviously.
No, I don't. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's what would I say? I mean, now obviously having seen, you know, it's probably it's a difficult and easy question to answer. I mean, probably looking at what's happened in the last, as you say, the last month or two with Dean leaving from a position where we probably thought we were settled in our back five, with Jeff Parling coming and the players we've got here and who have re-signed in the back five of our scrum. I think that, you know, obviously we've re-signed Ollie Atkins now, but if you'd have said, you know, 3 weeks ago, we know Dean's leaving, we're looking at you know, we need to add a second row to the squad. I mean, it would probably be you'd probably talk about a world-class lock, wouldn't you? I mean, because obviously we feel we've got good balance in the rest of the team. I mean, I would have thought, as I said before we signed Ollie Atkins, in my opinion, obviously we like homegrown players and we like English players. I'd have thought someone maybe a Courtney Laws would have been potentially a player you could have plucked out of World Rugby to have slotted into the team there. If you'd have gone, you know, with the players we've got there, if you think of the 3 or 4 second rows within the squad, if you drop a Courtney Laws in there, that you would see an addition to quality. I mean, you've always got X factor players, haven't you? You've always got your, I don't know.
Cipriani.
No.
Steve's in a tent shaking his head as well, sorry.
Obviously you've got your world class players playing in the Southern Hemisphere. In the backs, you kind of score tries out of nothing, haven't you? But I think ultimately, you know, I think what's always worked well for us is saying no, we don't necessarily need to sign a winger because we've got good wingers. We don't necessarily need to sign. You know, to me it would be where does someone fit into the squad, and I can imagine at that stage that would have been a good selection for us, as good as any.
That about us for I think that's about us for time. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rob Baxter.